All right, welcome back and thank you so much for staying with Morning Live. And now, the teacher accused of racism at a Johannesburg school, St. John's College in Johannesburg, has been fired. This came after parents and the Gauteng Department of Education intervened after the school decided to retain the teacher and gave him a final warning. He was found guilty on 3 charges of misconduct after making derogatory remarks to black pupils. But to talk to us more about this issue of racism and discrimination in the schooling system and the psychological impact on learners, of course, we joined in our studios in Johannesburg by Claudine Ribeiro. She is the director at the Johannesburg Parent and Child Counselling Center. And we also joined by Steve Mabona. He's the spokesperson for the Gauteng Department of Education. Good morning to both of you and thank you so much for coming through.
Morning.
Now, Dr. Mabona, I think one worrying factor is that, more so specifically with this case, is that had the MEC and the Department of Education not intervened, the teacher would still be teaching at the school.
Yeah, it's so unfortunate, and hence we encourage learners to interact with the department and let's report when we encourage any racism or any form thereof, because we are saying there's a sense of people saying we are independent, we are private. Department probably cannot, intervene because that will be probably an overreach. Because what normally people do, they will then unleash your lawyers to say department has a limitation. But we are saying anything that is outside the Constitution, anything that has to do with human rights, we are in charge of education in the province. So we will move in there, because we will not really tolerate a form of any racism or any alienation of learners, because we need to create a conducive environment for teaching and learning.
But this is surely not the case, because this is not the first case of its own. We've seen the MEC having to visit some schools more so with the very same reasons of racism. I think the main question here is, what will the department do to sort of put in place measures that are proactive instead of reacting to the situations once they occur?
Look, we've agreed with the Independent Schools Association of Southern Africa to say, let's have a summit, iron out a lot of issues, not only on racism. Let's look at the fees that we are paying at these schools. Let's look at how we, educate. How is the environment conducive for all of us? And agree on how we're going to be moving forward on in the independent environment.
All right, we are going to get to the summit in a short while, but I just want to bring Claudine into the conversation. What has your organization observed? Are we perhaps seeing a growing number of discrimination cases that are being reported to your organization?
I think what we see in our organization, working with children, working with adolescents in schools, is that they are grappling with moral issues. They're constantly trying to find their own moral compass and trying to find a way forward. And as they become adults, find a way that they can become good, moral, ethical people. And so they are grappling with these issues. And so I'm not saying that they necessarily are experiencing it daily in the classroom, but they are being fed different issues that are going to affect them one way or the other.
What is even more sad is the fact that not all children will report such cases to their parents.
I think that they won't. I think that especially in a school system, you've got to see that the child is part of quite a big system, and in the classroom where they are the ones that are perhaps receiving the racial slurs, they feel very disempowered. It's difficult to take on your own class and your own peers who might be laughing at a joke that's made in a racial way. And it's difficult to then take on the school themselves. It becomes very difficult. And if the school is seen to be protecting the perpetrator or the person who's doing these racial acts, it becomes very difficult for them to take on an entire system.
Yeah, and what does it do? How does it affect their well-being?
Well, children at school are grappling with their own self-esteem. They're trying to come to terms with who they are. They're trying to build up a good picture of themselves. So if they are brought down, especially on the issue, on identity issues of who they are, what they believe in, and they're constantly brought down in that way, then I think that it's obvious that it's going to affect their self-esteem. And then that in turn makes it even more difficult for them to take anyone on, to name and shame, because they don't believe they're worth it.
Oh.
They've developed a sense of worthlessness as a result of these ongoing comments.
Yeah, Ndate Mabona, now going back to the school, what is the department's observation? Do you think the school is really taking the issue of transformation seriously? Do you have trust in the leadership? A lot of people were saying that, why is the principal still there?
MEC was very clear on the issue of the principal. That I mean, he did tell him in his face to say, "You are very arrogant. I don't understand why you're even still here in this meeting." Hence, you know, the council was then given an opportunity to say, "Take back this matter, manage it, and then we'll come back to you." We're still going to continue.
But what does it say about the
them.
leadership of that particular school?
Look, there's a sense of infusion in terms of the leadership, because in that council you do have, you know, all races, if one might put it that way. So one cannot really chastise the school and say they are doing bad, but because you have an element of everyone there. Hence the MEC was saying, even there was a bishop who's a black person, who say, but bishop, it means, because this is a church-oriented school.
Yeah.
So it means if you are not doing anything, what are you saying? Are you saying the church is promoting racism? And hence, when they were telling us that they need 48 hours, we said no. At 1 o'clock, you must take a decision, and if you don't, then we'll move in.
Yeah.
So hence, you know, they cooperated, and we have a sense that they are positive in transforming, in changing. So we'll work very closely with them and still pursue the issue of the principal, because we're a very strong believer that the principal probably should not be there.
All right, so the summit will be in September, that's what you say?
The summit will be in September.
Okay.
We'll announce the date, where we'll be working very closely with all the schools and make sure that we create a conducive environment for teaching and learning.
All right, no, we'll leave it at that, but of course this is an issue for another day. Thank you so much to both of you for having talked to us here on Morning Live.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, that's the issue in relation to racism in schools. You can write to us about it at Morning Live SABC. Let's take a break here on the show. When we come back, your 7 o'clock news bulletin. Stay tuned.